Welcome to Cybersecurity Sense, a weekly podcast providing updates and insight into the latest in cybersecurity. Brought to you by LBMC Information Security. Now, here's your host.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to LBMC Cybersecurity Sense. Today we've got another episode, but something we haven't talked about yet. And no, it's not your usual monthly PCI topic because we've talked about that a lot. We've got something a little more groundbreaking, a little more interesting here. And we have a panel of 4 awesome professionals here with us to talk about it. Today, we're going to be talking about ChatGPT. So, hey guys, how's it going?
Hey, Will.
Hey, thanks for having us on.
Yeah, of course. That's good. Good. Let's go through and introduce everybody really fast so we can kind of give everybody an idea of who's on here and everyone's kind of background. So we'll just go ahead and do that. I guess you want to start, Brad?
Sure. Thanks for kicking it off with me. No, definitely appreciate you having us on the podcast today. But I'm Bradley Williamson. I'm a senior data engineer here practicing in the LBMC Data Insights practice.
Awesome. And then I'm just going in the order that it is on my screen right now. So, John, you're next.
Yeah, no worries. Well, thanks for having us on today. Yeah, my name is Jon Hilton. I'm I run our data analytics practice. We call it Data Insights here at LBMC. And we really focus on helping a number of organizations of varying sizes work through their data to really make their data useful for decision making and for KPI tracking, whatever it may be, wherever that data may be, maybe in disparate sources. And so really excited about this topic today because as it moves, as you know, data moves from its use cases around analytics to machine learning and AI. And so as we start to get on the precipice of much more common use of AI and machine learning, in this case, ChatGPT, eager to see where kind of those worlds collide to help companies really leverage this to the best extent possible.
Right. And then Dan.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Dan Ellsworth. I'm a data engineer here at LBMC. My background is in math and computer science. I've always had an interest in machine learning and AI, so really looking forward to kind of diving into the ChatGPT topic.
And then last but not least, we have Will following up.
All right. Thank you for the intro, everyone. My background, I'm will.son, Senior Manager here with our LBMC Data Insights practice. My background for a long time has been data strategy, data management, and governance, both from a technical implementation solution to the really understanding functionally what that data means, right? So I like to really go into conversations with clients and help them really show, what how do you play offense with data? How do you play defense with data? Love it in a sports term because that's what it really means to create that data journey. So looking forward to a good, healthy conversation and session today. So thank you for the setup.
Awesome. Yes, of course. Well, thank you guys again for joining. And I myself, I'm on the technical team, so I break in and try and grab data, but I don't understand the whole background and terminology behind a lot of stuff that you guys do. So I'm actually looking forward to hearing you guys talk about this a little bit, because I know from our end of stuff that we hear from clients and from other individuals, you hear everybody talking about ChatGPT. What is this thing? What does it do? Can I use this for my company? Can I use it for everyday work? Can I use it for X, Y, and Z, right? There's a bunch of different use cases for it. And honestly, I've seen a lot of viable use cases in the industry for that. So I know you guys have kind of been thinking about this and mulling this a little bit. What do you guys think about it?
Yeah, perhaps I'll maybe kick off and I'll let others kind of join in. And I think the use of it kind of has a wide spectrum as you've mentioned. And two of the common elements that I've seen, and we can perhaps dig first on the data side of it, or just the software engineering, the coding aspect of it, is its ability, which I think is unique from other chat bots that are out there and other natural language processing kind of elements that have been out there routinely used in business, is that ChatGPT can actually construct code for you, whether that's in Python, whether that's any other coding language you may use. And so, obviously from a cybersecurity standpoint, I'm sure you're looking at it already from saying, hey, well, now can a teenager in Russia or some other place that has nefarious purposes, or within anywhere in the world for that matter, kind of be able to create code to specifically find vulnerabilities or to gain access. And so, as I see that, and then on our side, what we see on the data side is, could this be utilized extensively to kind of build out code and data, whether that's SQL querying or creating a Python script relative to, creating a loop around and iterating through a lot of data. And so that's a large area we've seen technically. And then we can maybe later talk more about the social elements of it, and it's more kind of common language. But that's what I start to think about as the kind of core novelty that I've seen as a difference. But I'll let others weigh in as well.
Yeah, I'll kind of follow up there because I see a little bit of a different perspective from the software engineering side. I think it's pretty immature currently. So I think as a very beginner base case, it provides you with a template or kind of a starting point, which would be obviously really helpful to kind of dive into a problem that you're trying to solve. But I think where I see it really strive currently is in the social aspect. So I think, using it to write definitions or kind of clean up emails or provide, any kind of grammatical assistance, I think it's, very, very like strong in that sense. But I kind of have tested it and obviously played around with it and haven't gotten the best results that some of the other, AI platforms out there that are strictly for code development. So that, I guess, I see it as a very, it's very new. So it's an immature kind of concept. I think as it starts to scale and obviously grows, it's going to become much, much more adept at those things. But I definitely see it from the side of it being, a very, very useful tool in kind of the medial tasks that you have at work, writing things, providing questions, things like that. It does a very good job at, hey, here's these few points that I want to touch on. Can you give me, a meeting agenda? It's very, very stellar in those concepts to me. So that's kind of my quick thoughts about it. But I've definitely been overly impressed with what they've kind of created here.
Yeah,
I think I agree with. Sorry, Dan. I think jumped a little ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I think I agree with the kind of the maturity level. I'm a little old school. I've been in the industry a long time, and I still always hold what's called a enterprise point of view. So, I think Brad had mentioned some of those points, like, does this really scale, right? So we only seen a small portion of like the front end piece of how you can actually feed data, ask questions, and it's very complementary to refining your email. If you have key points that you don't want to really draft everything, but throw that in there and it'll do a pretty good job of providing that type of content. And then, testing things out, even from a code perspective. I think I was talking to some of the guys here was, I take a unstructured data set and that's written JSON or XML. One of the things that we do is we convert that into a more structured setting into a table so that we can do analytics. Because when you're in table structure, then you can use a query language like SQL, SQL, to query the tables. So simple things like that, it does a good job, but we want to see if we can do it at a scale, right? We don't know. But, since this engine is a pattern driven and it's got natural processing language, our hope is that, once, like Microsoft and Azure gets hold of it and build really that back end piece of it, with security, with governance. Those are all separate topics we probably want to talk about on this podcast as well. Once that's been proven out, I'll be more in to say, hey, this is going to be real. But it's really just scratching the surface right now. So, but I do see the potential of it and trying to figure out more of the use cases around that as well. But that's kind of my point of view at this point in time. But it's exciting. Right? There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, I definitely think there's a lot of hype around it. A lot of people, when they talk about talk about replacing jobs, like it's going to replace this job or that job. I feel like right now, like it's at a point where it's a great assistant. Like I know a lot of developers on the team, we use it as kind of like a way to maybe check work or to maybe do some of the more monotonous tasks or to get more done in less time. But definitely not something that is fully built out. And I'm sure it will continue to like improve in time, and we'll see more and more use cases as it evolves.
Yeah, man. So like I know that they've gone through, I think, 3 iterations of it so far, haven't they? 3 different, is
Yep.
it completely different algorithms, or are they just kind of fixing a few things in the algorithm, then releasing a new version like they do with phones and stuff?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Probably
I think
something like that.
it's somewhere in
Sure,
between
yeah.
where like they're just like tweaking a little bit. But yeah, ChatGPT 4 is coming out soon in the next month or two, I think.
Right.
Yeah, so they're moving like very fast on it. It's constantly changing.
Because I know for cyber, as far as the cyber front goes, like John kind of hit in the beginning a little bit, we do have a lot of concerns whenever it comes to the security of folks and their code and everything that kind of goes on, right? Because, just to play devil's advocate over here, because I focus on a different area, whenever I hear you guys talk about writing these scripts, writing these things, my first thought is like, oh, I can use this to make a ransomware. I can use this to make a piece of software that's just going to totally wreak havoc on a company. And we've seen that already from some threat actors that exist in other countries that are just active like crazy. But even further than that, there are so many. It's hard to weigh the pros and the cons here. So I mean, even just hearing you guys talk about this and hearing how it sounds like there's a lot of hype around it. It's not necessarily super. Just like Will is saying, there are a bunch of different aspects to it that still need to be, I guess, what was centralized or unified as far as like making it scalable for organizations, correct?
Yep.
Right, more enterprise. Yeah.
Enterprise. Yes. I got to get the wording right. We're working on that. So whenever it comes to that set of things, whenever it comes to the enterprise and scalability and the actual true use case, what are some qualities you'd like to see from it? Or is it something that you look for in the industry that people are kind of more accepting of this idea? How do you gauge when it's really a good time to just start using it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, Microsoft getting involved will really build that piece out. So I think the way they set it up within Azure as part of their services, they call it OpenAI. I think that's really the end-to-end, a platform. And then what you do is you use that end-to-end platform to build solutions. So I think they're figuring out those components, right, to show how we can scale that from a scalability perspective, and also things like security and governance, right? Because we got to govern that data, So I think we're still trying to understand, where is that data going to go? Where is it going to live? Who's going to govern it? Who's going to secure it? Especially with our practice, we have a heavy set of healthcare clients. So we have sensitive data, we have patient information, PHIs, right? PII. So moving that data out into something public like OpenAI, we can't do that. So what does that roadmap look like, right? So that's kind of the biggest question mark that I have. And I think some of the colleagues here have similar questions, right, around that data. Because ultimately, it's a data-driven engine. More data you feed in, the better it is.
Right.
Yeah.
And from what I understand, it's not even using real-world data yet, is it? I don't even know if it's using that yet.
It's limited. They talk about, what the limits of the dates that you can go back and ask it questions, et cetera. But that, I think, we're getting on the topic here. I really think that you have to start to look at, from a commercial use case, specificity versus generality. And so I think if we all opened up, OpenAI today and tried ChatGPT, you're going to ask it, very generalized questions. Create my kids are playing this, create a rap song about geese or something like this. It has this kind of capability, or tell me about this. And yes, there's and I think we talked about some of the common everyday use cases. But if you really think from a company, a client perspective, they're going to be asking questions like this. I've spent a lot of money on a chatbot. What's that chatbot do? That chatbot, I have business logic. I have company-specific data that I have fed it to maneuver or to guide a customer to what they need to know to perform something or interact with me as a company to get what they want at the end of it, right? So there's a level of specificity in that chatbot. The same will be with ChatGPT. I think that you're going to have to take this corpus of training knowledge that it has, that being GPT 3.5 right now, soon to be GPT 4, which is even more massive. But if you ask it a specific question like relative to your organization, like what, I saw Dr. So and so last week. These were my symptoms. Can you tell me what his follow up was? Yeah, I think that ChatGPT will be able to interact with its natural programming and its natural training, and in addition to your specific data, your specific information, combine that together to really show immense value, whether that's your customer or your patient, or maybe suppliers and vendors. And so I think the challenge will be for companies is to watch ChatGPT, but really think through, am I going to be the type of company that's going to be able to harness this in a robust way? Well, if you are, I think you need to start asking, like Will is talking about, these enterprise questions. You need to be asking yourself, well, if ChatGPT does this, is my data ecosystem ready? Can I really bring to the forefront or feed to a ChatGPT specific knowledge or information about my company to guide my customers, to guide my patients to where they're going to need? Because those that figure that piece out the fastest, those that adopt that the fastest, I think you are going to see clear early adopter winners, and those that can't get off the ground, because everybody will likely have some form of ChatGPT and Outlook and Bing, etc. Right? That's how pervasive it's going to be. And so it's not going to be specific for you to harness it for a lot of advanced competitive advantage unless you really start thinking about, is my data in order to allow it to have specific value for me on an enterprise level?
Yeah, and see, those are great answers. See, this is stuff that I have no idea how to look at it because I don't even ever see this before, right? I've never actually thought about it in this perspective. As far as the scalability goes, and in a lot of people's eyes, and a lot of people see it as just like this little kind of toy that's sitting out there right now that can be useful for certain things. And just like you guys had highlighted, it's in the very beginning, quote unquote, stages of really kind of getting worked into infrastructure, or even just getting in a place where it could potentially be put into infrastructure, right? And I think a lot of the bumps that they're hitting right now, I don't know if you've hit the Brad. It sounds like you played around with it for a little while. Is they're having to work out some things that it can and cannot answer. And there have been a lot of questions people have been asking it where it shouldn't be able to answer that it's answering, and vice versa. So like as far as the cybersecurity stuff, there are a lot of things that it's just dishing out all this stuff, and they're like, hold up, we have to go back and refine and train this machine learning model. Do you think that'll really, as far as data insights, data analytics, any of that stuff goes, do you feel like there are any heavy implementations there that they just haven't really hit any of that stuff yet?
Yeah, so I think we've touched on it a little bit around, kind of your security and governance of your data, and then around where, who owns that when you send that back to OpenAI. Because I've definitely seen that chat break, turn it into Dan or whatever they call it. And, then you can ask it kind of anything and it'll give you more of those provocative answers, or like you said, Will, kind of that more threatening kind of set of information. So I think there needs to be some kind of governance on Microsoft's side. But in a completely different discussion, I think that needs to be more around security and less around kind of the prejudice decisions. So I've seen a lot of controversy around what it'll answer to, and then who's defined as what. And I think they want to kind of stay away from that commercially, because at the forefront, it's a fantastic tool for all that. But I think you have to be very careful with what you allow it to do. And, I've seen all the jokes of, they're paying some guy to sit there with a water bucket in the server room. So, throw water on it and turn it off. So I think as you navigate through that, you start to see what it could really do. And, if you give it full free access to everything, I think it could be, at a very immature stage without safeguards, very, very dangerous. So that's kind of just my first thoughts. But yeah, I think that needs to have a pretty solid grip on what that looks like, so we can kind of, continue to mature it, but not let it kind of run free.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that Microsoft has tried to kind of put some guardrails on it for what you can or cannot do. I mean, like for ChatGPT and OpenAI right now, you have to fill out an application that says what you're going to use it for. They spend a lot of money on ethical AI and doing research on in these areas, but I do think that it's a really challenging at the best case and maybe even possible job to do, because a lot of these models are open source, right? So you can go and get the code directly. You can tweak things how you see fit. So when you're talking about nefarious actors who just want to do harm, I mean, how can you really prevent that if the code is available for everyone to use, right? So I do think it's a challenging question, and it'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
Yeah. A comment I like to make, when Microsoft or Azure got into the OpenAI and ChatGPT, I think Elon Musk said it the best. He said, "Now it's centralized, not open anymore." Right? Because now Microsoft owns it, so they can direct it based on their perspectives and so on. So it's more centralized. So I think based on that, I think Elon said he was going to build something to compete with it that's more open. So so you always had that type of struggle.
Right.
Yeah, and I think Will brings up an excellent point, and for those that are listening, as to where this is heading. Look, I would view this as a seminal moment in the development of natural language processing in general, because I do think you're about to see, and we know this is coming, is there is going to be a just arms race around the release of natural language processing. With Google, obviously they weren't expecting this to come, and so they had their red alert meeting, brought in their previous execs, right, in a very urgent way, and then now they're releasing their competitor as well, Barb, or I think Bard. And so you're just going to start seeing everybody searching for their release, and I'm sure AWS. I know that they have Stable Diffusion on the AI generative side. And so, be prepared, buckle up for what I can only probably say is a race for release. And so, is that good? Is that going to push a lot more out there than probably should be out there? Yes. But what we're going to see is that those they're all afraid of being last on this. Microsoft did what I'd probably say is a deft business move and quickly acquiring that, pulling it into Azure, and even opening it up now for even companies like LBMC and our data team to submit an application to build a use case leveraging ChatGPT, so that a tool can be created that just uses ChatGPT on the back end, but really is bringing that capability to bear. And so I think we're going to see it's going to be an interesting time as more and more of the releases come out, as GPT-4 comes out, that we are in an age right now, or in a short term of large releases, and a lot of news will be in this space for some time to come.
Yeah, John, we're definitely in the middle of a quote unquote revolution right now. I'm waiting just to see the headline AI revolution 2023 till whatever it may be, just like the industrial revolution and whatnot. But even with AI happening right now, for those that are familiar with quantum computing, that's also a big race at the moment as well. And that's been a huge forefront on the cyber front, just because we can do a lot more with quantum. Everybody can do things more with quantum. If you're not familiar with what quantum computing is, it's a totally different style of computing than right now. And it's incredibly powerful, incredibly strong, can solve problems really fast. We're not getting into the specifics of it because that'll take way too long. It'll be way too confusing. But just a prediction on my end, I feel like I could see this kind of AI service line being integrated with that to solve these problems or come up with these resolutions, or all these things a lot faster. It's much more scalable at that point. However, quantum computing is not at that stage yet. It's still in the very early stages where that probably won't really happen for a while. So as far as ChatGPT goes, do you guys really see the viability in using it for your work? What would you really use it for? Just making the tables from the data, or would you use it from everything from that to the analytics of, hey, here's how much revenue we've made this month. What are our projections going forward? What do we need to change about important business strategies and whatnot? How deep do you think it'll really get into? And this is not actuality. Just want to preface it. This is not actuality. What's going to happen set in stone. We're just kind of talking about it.
Yeah. I'll make some predictions if it does mature. I think because this AI engine is really, the premise of it is, how much data you feed in, and it's really good at looking at data patterns, the structures of it. If it's really that good, a lot of the transformations, the in between work that even we do, transforming that data, structuring that data to create analytics, that piece could go away. So I can give you an example where we have a set of data. It's all raw, nothing structured, but
Right.
there's patterns to it. And you just give it a question: hey, what is my revenue for 2017? And being able to sift through that data and looking at the patterns and give me that value, that return, that is tremendously powerful. And then next time it's trained, so now it's going to say, hey, I know the answers for 2019, 2020. Historicals, that type of information. Things like, hey, here's a mass of dirty data that's not structured. It's still very raw. Show me all the duplicate entities. Where's my duplications? And show me that result set. Right now, we would have to run a bunch of queries to answer those questions. So imagine that type of power. There's tremendous amount of enterprise software just to handle those type of use cases. And so I can see those companies going out of business. Why do you need it?
Right.
And right now, a lot of the organizations, they have a lot of data, is tapping into it and making meaningful information out of it for their business advantage. That's really, that's one of the things that holds a lot of organizations back. They have data, but they don't know what to do with it. They don't know what information is in there, and so on. So I kind of see that happening, but again, I haven't seen the the maturity level end to end to see if that will be realized in the future.
Right.
Yeah, and I kind of see it in the same standpoint. We have some other partners that do kind of data virtualization where you just kind of run queries on your different source systems. So if you can imagine a pretty large enterprise company or something's going to have multiple different systems, I think the future of that too is going to lead into kind of stitching of all those systems. So some of the tools that we've partnered with have kind of this stitching capability where it can go navigate through all of your source systems using federated queries and kind of combine all that data together. So I think as this matures and grows, and obviously technology changes very rapidly. So we've already seen kind of, we used to do a data warehouse technique, and we can do a kind of a data lake house technique. Which is more of just kind of landing your data. So I can kind of see it to start to exactly what Will said too, kind of take that piece out, because now you can just have something run all those queries for you, basically crawl all that data and then populate some result where you don't need to have a lot of, business analysts or, data engineers to move that data, clean it, so on and so forth. So I think it takes a lot of that heavy lift that a lot of companies, have to kind of pay for. And then when you pay for that, you have to also maintain that. And those are very expensive costs. So if you can kind of provide a low entry solution that isn't, intensely it doesn't cost you a lot, I think that becomes a very powerful use case that enterprises will be able to leverage. I think that's something I see in the future.
Yeah, and I to just kind of piggyback on what Brad mentioned, I think getting rid of some of those layers. So right now there's a lot of manual setup, ingesting raw data and transforming it through the ETL stages into something that's actually usable and, something like a report. If we're able to kind of use some of the pattern recognition that AI is capable of, I think we could just move so much faster. And it's also combining like a lot of the different tools that we need to use today. We can kind of just centralize and use like one tool, like the Azure stack would have ChatGPT, and we can kind of use it all under the same umbrella instead of using all these disparate source systems and different tools. It kind of brings everything together and unifies it and allows us to move at a much faster pace.
I'll provide my crystal ball here as well. I think one thing use case I think is quite interesting to me as well. Probably not as much in the data space, and I'll come back to that here in a minute. But the is the interaction between you're seeing ChatGPT and then OpenAI AI often overlooked is the DALL-E 2, and then obviously with Stable Diffusion, the AI generative art. And I think you're going to see some interesting play between these two, meaning that ChatGPT can create prompts, and if you've worked in AI generative art or use one of those, like Night Cafe or something like that, and just play around with AI generative art, you can see that the prompts could be created to create those type of graphics, etc. So I do think that there's something around content creation, a lot of creativity that could start to interact together, which we might see in more of the entertainment industry, or even even in consulting, where PowerPoints, etc., can kind of start to come together, and visual understanding is a little easier. So I think there's some of that, but I do think I go back, much as what's been said here is how do I really connect my customers and my patients to the most important information that they need to access from me as a company. And I'm going to need a generic capability like ChatGPT with all of this specific data that Brad and Will mentioned, to really connect them to the right information at the right time to make them really satisfied and really high levels of engagement. And that is going to be ensembling some unique technologies. I think Brad mentioned it, data fabric. We have a partnership with Prometheum, and we know what they can do in terms of accessing data, federated queries across on-prem or on-cloud data sources or multi-data warehouses. And so if you can bring some of that very quickly and virtualize that to a chat GPT and connect that to a customer in a high velocity to answer some critical questions, I think you're going to see just the value proposition relative to what these technologies provide people as just exploding. And again, there will be winners in this, and it will be those that really think through that. And a lot of this is not going to be, in my opinion, high cost, high investment type of efforts. And so you're going to see some of this is going to come in a lot more low weight and a lot faster. And I think there's going to be some disruption in the industry because of that. And that people are going to watch these companies that are adopting this methodology as providing higher levels of satisfaction and engagement of their customers. And they're going to wonder how and why. And this is probably going to be the reason why.
You start to see a lot of the productivity for other companies just shoot straight through the roof, and here you are all the way down here at the bottom. You're like, yo, what are we doing wrong?
And I spent $100 million on my massive data infrastructure, and they're like, what am I doing wrong? And it's like, there was this early adoption that you maybe missed out on.
Right. Well, unless you guys have any more points are there any more points you guys want to kind of make or share anything with anybody before we cut it off?
I just maybe let you maybe at the very back end, talk about anything cybersecurity related. But, one thing I do think about is the typical phishing email, which tends to be the vulnerability for so many organizations. I do think about not even just the writing the code to find vulnerabilities, but we've all been trained on emails to watch out for the dear sir, and I'm from Nigeria and I'm a prince and I need this much money, etc. And it's misspelled and it's awkward, and you're like, oh well, of course, don't click on that one. But I do think that there is a dark side to this as well, where it's, hey, I can scrape some information about you very notionally off of a social media platform, combine it with ChatGPT, and it looks very fluid. It's by definition, that email is unique in and of itself. That's addressing you in a very socially engineered way. And so I do think about that as the new frontier of the phishing email. And so I don't know if you have seen that, but I do think about that a lot in relationship to this topic.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, especially just on the front of writing, not only emails, I have friends who are TAs. They oversee college courses. A lot of kids have been using ChatGPT to write their papers, right? Well, there was another kid, I think he went to Purdue, that wrote a piece of software that's on a website that exists out there that can detect if it used ChatGPT's algorithm. So as far as writing credible, convincing works, it can definitely do that, John. That's a great point. And yeah, I feel like I haven't personally seen it because I'm not on that far of a front to where I would be receiving. Well, I mean, even if I did receive it, I wouldn't know it that it was done by ChatGPT. But I think it really is. And, you can use it from a different perspective once it can actually evolve and use real-time, real-world data to be like, here's what I'm kind of scared of, is that someone's going to be like, hey, go get me all information on this guy. And then it just goes and finds all this information like that. And it's like, oh, well, that's kind of creepy, because a lot of that stuff exists out there in the internet already. So I think through, like you guys have talked about, through several iterations and several different, I guess, malleable moments to change things and fix things before it is fixed and ready to be released, it's definitely premature in that sense. I would not want this to be released on the internet. But even moving on from that, as far as malware goes on the cybersecurity front, like it can write code that looks like no other virus, no other anything else that anybody has seen before in the industry. And so now, instead of having to look at a piece of software and say, is this really good or bad? You have to watch and see how it actually acts behavioral wise. Like, you have to see how it functions. What is it really doing? Because it can write a piece of code that may look like, oh, you're just going to create a file here and just type in this text. Well, in the background, it's actually creating the file, moving all these other files into that file, then encrypting that file, and then typing out this little piece of text on top of all that stuff. You don't see it, right?
Yeah.
So there are a bunch of different aspects to it, and we could go super in depth, or we can take it super high level here. I'm just going to keep it high level. It can make some seriously bad malware. So some bad viruses that could affect your company, ransomware based as well. For those of you that are listening that are worried about that, it is possible. They are currently teaching the machine to not do that. So actually, I was talking today with another guy on the technical services team, and somebody has created another way to get around ChatGPT, OpenAI's like filter system for the bot.
Dan, right?
Dan, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I saw it this morning. I was like, okay, this is bad. This is bad. So we're gonna see what will happen with this. Again, everything like John and Dan and Will and Brad are saying, it's developing at such a fast rate that a lot of us are just trying to keep up with what it's even doing or what people are really doing with it, right? There's no super viable use case with it. Everybody that uses it right now, it's a very independent level. It's not a very organizationally centralized thing until Microsoft, it sounds like, adopted it. And now that they have Azure up on the back end and they're kind of filling out what people want to do with it. I think we will see implementations or implications in ransomware. We'll find them as far as finding vulnerabilities in code or in people's software or databases or what it may be. Because as a pen tester, someone who does all the technical work, it's not easy to find vulnerabilities. It takes time. It takes a lot of knowledge and know-how. And if you have a bot that understands that, just like you can parse through all this data that's just raw data and put it into a table. If I can just run that on a database or some kind of configuration file, and it just says, oh, boom, found this in about 0.3 seconds. That's pretty nice. And it definitely gives you the upper hand. Understand that cybersecurity and the technical services kind of area, the hacking area, that's a business too. Everything operates like a business, right? You have all your key components that operate within the organization. You have your time management stuff. You have your payroll. You have all this stuff. All these gangs who are doing this to organizations, and they're really just breaking them down, they operate very much so like a normal company does. Their employees have PTO. They actually do. So, you got to have some time off for your super illegal job, just so you can stay sane. We can't lose you. So as far as what businesses can really do to protect themselves, honestly, guys, if you're really worried about cybersecurity, just keep on doing your normal security awareness training. Like John was saying, those phishing emails, make sure your employees know what to look for. If there's something that looks kind of odd, just give a phone call to somebody. Like, contact that person in a different way than they contacted you. If they emailed you, you text them or you call them or send them a Teams message, something different that's not how you received it. That way you're actually going to the person and not, to the person who sent you, or to the bad guy who sent you that email.
And I think, Will, too, that touches on something that I wanted to talk about is I don't think a lot of the world is ready for the deep fake kind of implementations. If you get a call
Right.
from your CEO and he's like, "Hey, I need you to wire this check." Well, now that that's not some sketchy email that you got. That's actually a phone call that you've received. So I think that security awareness training of calling somebody back, or like you said, texting, or maybe going to see them in person is going to have to be something that the world has to adapt to, because,
Right.
I think a lot of the world is not prepared for that. You see that all the time. Oh, your mom gets a call. They say, "Oh, you're in jail. Wire me $10,000 to get you bailed out." I think that's another vulnerability that a lot of the world isn't prepared for, is seeing or hearing something that sounds 100% realistic, but it's not.
Oh, totally. Dude, it's scary. It's
No,
actually
definitely.
scary.
Yeah, it's crazy.
You bring up the deep fake thing. Now my brain is going off into the deep end and thinking about that, because it's there are whole Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, whatever you prefer to use. There are accounts on there who are just dedicated to making deep fakes. Like there's one that's completely about who is it? Denzel Washington. And it is, all of them are completely fake, but they look incredibly real. It's insane. um
Yeah, I'm wondering, like, it's kind of a glass half full mentality. If maybe, like, I mean, there's a way to kind of implement that use case where AI can kind of detect, deep fakes, kind of like how we have the college papers that are submitted and it knows that this was created by me.
right.
Or, if we're finding vulnerabilities in like systems, using AI, it's like, well, can we also ask the AI if there are any vulnerabilities in our system? So I wonder, like, if it could be deployed to, like, kind of duke it out amongst itself, and what that would look like. Um, but yeah, I hope there's something to combat that, because yeah, that's not a world I want to live in.
Yeah, no, I think that we're going to see that. That's a good point, Dan. And I've actually had conversations with this on the back end with some other folks as well. I think that we're going to see a big push for ChatGPT to weaponize against itself in a sense. Because how do you defend against an AI? Oh, we can't do it ourselves. We've got to have another AI, because
Yeah.
we can't process that fast, right? We can't come up with the solutions that fast, and much more so, we can't get that granular as fast as it can. So, Dan, I think that that's a great thing, because that's what we're all kind of thinking about right now. And AI is. If you'd asked me 10 years ago, AI is going to take over and we're going to start utilizing it, I would be like, there's no way. There's no way. That's creepy. And here it is, slowly making its way.
Well, and what's interesting about this topic of, how does it get against itself or tell against itself? The real core, underlying capability is the generative adversarial network, right? That its ability to do exactly what we've said. That's how it's advanced so much. It takes a picture, and there's another training that says, well, it will submit a picture with pixels, etc., and then it'll say real or fake. And then if it's fake, it pushes it back. It retrains itself. And so that's what it's essentially doing, and that's what the natural language processing element of this even has done. It has been trained on this generative adversarial network. And so while I agree that there's opportunity for it to identify when it is itself versus not itself, someone else will then create the same generative network, right? Where it's going to do the same thing in reverse, to tell itself not to tell itself that it's itself,
Right.
something along those lines. And that's where deep fakes, that's essentially the same, technology or basis or framework for deep fakes as well. And so we're just going to get to a point where it's indistinguishable between, how we perceive versus what it's producing. But I do think it is, there's, I always akin a lot of this to the Industrial Revolution. And maybe there's a lot of talk of Industrial Revolution 4.0. And Industrial Revolution comes with a lot of great things and a lot of downside, right? And so we've seen that in every industrial revolution. There is great advancements in technology, in productivity, standard of living, even, but there are clear, societal downfalls that come from that then have to be course corrected. Obviously, I think the example is, obviously with the invention of coal and that industrial revolution, we don't want kids in coal mines, right? I mean, but that's part of what happens, right? And so society had it well, or kids in factories, and people are chained to a factory 7 days a week with low pay, and so I think you're going to see this ebb and flow of, if this truly is Industrial Revolution 4.0, massive gains in productivity, massive gains in technology, but there's going to have to be a reckoning from a society to say what's right, what's the right governance, and we're going to have to combat some of those things. Much like the internet has not brought all great things, there's ills that have come through it as well. And we can, as in cybersecurity and the dark web and all these things, and there's going to have to be some counterbalancing for sure. As it continues to leverage kind of these, that kind of basis as its underlying technology.
Yeah. I have another crystal ball kind of moment.
Let's hear it, Will. Let's hear it.
Going back to that arms race, the way I see this is going to shape out is, when we had the search engine arms race, if you want to call it, you had Yahoo's, you had Internet Explorer, you had Google, Mozilla. I mean, you probably had at least half a dozen we could name here. But ultimately, Google won out, right? Because it was the simplest, best search algorithms and so on, and usability, right? So I think something similar to that's going to play out. I think we mentioned AWS is going to have their own version. Salesforce is going to have their own. Oracle is already going to have their own version. Azure with OpenAI and many others. So I think that is good because it's competition. We live in a free market, free society. So competition is always good. The best of breed is always going to win, right?
Right.
So I kind of see that shaping out from that perspective. Just from a consumer perspective, I kind of see that happening. Another one is, I think it's a great time to make money. Meaning, if you're an investor, you line up with the right venture capital or even, startups that are building these type of capabilities and you're investing into it. I think it's going to be a big win, right? I think there's going to be a lot of big winners and losers, similar to cryptocurrency, right? That kind of faded, still there, but a lot of people won big early. And as of recently, a lot of people lost. So I think we're kind of at that pivotal moment from a technology perspective. So I think it's, again, very exciting time and great opportunity for a lot of us who's in this game.
Man, that's so true. It is definitely that time frame where it's like, if you want in, you got to jump in. It's that time. It's like, it's at the most fertile point right now where it's like, okay, you have a bunch of seed money that now hits, boom, the development does nothing but skyrocket even more. That definitely happened with Bitcoin and a lot of those cryptocurrencies, and everyone started jumping on a little bit later. I'm not telling you what to do with your finances, but
no, I'm not telling you. I'm not suggesting anything, but if you're smart, the opportunity is there.
Just go put your whole bank account away in Ameritrade in some company. No, I'm just kidding. So I mean, those are great points, and I mean, even from all of you guys, just speculating on what it can do or what will happen with it as far as cybersecurity or investments or anything else goes, it's kind of fun. You never really kind of know. And then we can all look at this 5 years later and be like, hey, you were right or you were not. So, I mean, just touching on the last few things here, because we don't want to make this too long. Just make sure you've run through all your generic checks for your network security, like internet accessible devices and application software. Make sure everything is regulated and totally locked down inside the company. Only work with vendors and partners that you're aware of, and you understand their security regulations they have in place, security policies they have in place, because a lot of times these breaches and things that happen with organizations, it's because of a third party that wasn't watching out for a certain area of their organization, and they were the ones that got breached, that then breached into your organization. And honestly, we already hit on AI cybersecurity tools. I mean, we're talking about ChatGPT fighting itself and a bunch of other stuff. The last thing I want to talk about is the zero trust security model. This is an idea that is pretty rapidly being addressed, or not even addressed, but being implemented into a lot of organizations. And I work with some other organizations where they really harp on this, is implementing this model into your organization. And essentially what it is you have zero trust over the users in your network, right? You don't trust anybody with any kind of level access or anything. I know that Brad is dealing with this on a certain level right now somewhere. And we've all had this kind of mentality where it's like, okay, somebody's asking you, why do you need access to this? Why do you want to see this data? Why do you need this? How long do you need it? All these specific questions. It's much like whenever you as a kid are getting raised, and let's say your parent is at home, you're like, hey, can I go to so-and-so's house to go over and play? And they're like, sure, yeah, you can go over there. How long are you going to be there? When are you going to be back? What are y'all going to do? All the pretty prototypical questions you're asked. Same concept applies to the network. So you have all of your users, and everybody essentially doesn't have any access to much of anything unless you have to have that, right? And even at that, it's still very restricted, because with how fast this stuff works, how fast AI works, how fast all these other things work, if you can cut it off at an instance and you have someone on your network that doesn't have access to something that they shouldn't, that's going to limit your risk. That's going to mitigate your risk of somebody getting access to something that they shouldn't have. I've seen pen tests where a janitor has access to the keys to the kingdom, for lack of better words. Like, we all have these struggles and we all have these things, but it's always good to just remind ourselves of some of the basic security stuff. And, as we're talking about this, but, gentlemen, great little panel here today. Thank you guys for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us, Will.
Yeah, thank you. It's been excellent.
Yeah. Any parting words for our folks before we go? Any wise words to the listeners out there?
Well, again, the only thing I can think of is if you're interested in learning more, or some of our thoughts around it. I think for most companies, again, start thinking hard about your data strategy and where your data is. So when these technologies come out, you can actually start using them. Those that have it ready and accessible and have some capabilities around it will be ones that can advance with these type of capabilities faster and gain a competitive edge. Those that are still further behind are going to find more than likely that they are going to fall even further behind. So the best time to start your data journey or accelerate it is always today. That's what I say.
Give us a call.
Good stuff. Good stuff. All right, guys. Thank you for listening to LBMC Cybersecurity Sense. We'll see you again on the next episode. Take care. And if you want to reach out to any of these fine gentlemen here, we will have all of their email addresses or just the data insight contact information below. Reach out to them with any questions or anything. If you want to do business with us, we always love talking to new people. So thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.